Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? I'm quite happy with the results of my last couple episodes, the Japanese shopping one, but more importantly, my Grant Green Auto Moments, which opened up with about 15 minutes talking about uh, the journey of collecting music and how it's being reshaped by the online scene and how it's conforming everyone's tastes and everyone's collections look the same. Everyone's just buying new repressings that are being force fed to them by the consumer media, saying this is a must have, it's essential. And it really resonated with a lot of people. And that journey that I spoke of, where it used to be we all had our own little path to take, and we'd often find similar mileposts, but the paths were always divergent and they never stayed in sync like I feel like so much of today's collecting society is. And you really only have to do all you have to do is go to the jazz Facebook groups and see how homogenous the posts are. Outside of a few outliers, most people are posting just the same. And a new thing comes out and everyone's posting it. It's kind of monotonous. It's a little bit discouraging, but a lot of people, like I said, it resonated with them. And that journey through your musical life, it's like your fingerprint, and no two should ever be the same. And it is important because it's how you connect with the music, and it's how it resonates and what it means to you. And when it's personal, it becomes it's not disposable anymore. It's mile markers of your own life and your own existence and how you feel about your place in this world. And when it's music that you kind of found, you connect with it differently, and you'll remember and go back to it and be like, man, that was how I felt at that time. And I'm really happy to hear how many people connected with that ideology. And not to say that it's going to change the younger set. I think it was most people my age that were connecting with what I had to say. But all the same, it was a wonderful expose. I felt like I really had a train of thought that was nice and focused. I watched my own episode for the first time in quite a while yesterday. I actually watched both of those. Time hasn't really allowed me to watch myself very much with working for my brother part-time, going to the gym 3 days a week, still trying to raise a kid and clean and cook for my wife. I'm not complaining. My life, I'm blessed, and part of my job is to make a couple, 3 episodes on YouTube every week, which I love to do. So again, thank you all for being the audience and participating. And I love the feedback loop. I love the all the exchange and comments, and it's a great community that we have here on this channel. And thank you to all of you guys, man. It's a wonderful thing to have like-minded souls. And I'm not saying conforming, I'm just saying like-minded. And like I said, the value in the music and the importance of the music, it goes beyond just the mile markers of your life and your personality and what it says about you. It's like a kind of a photo album of your life's memories auditorily. And it can actually reveal quite a lot about who you are, where you come from, your personality. As a DJ, you certainly learn to read people's photo albums musically and get a pretty good idea, like, oh, they like that photo. I know a few of the pictures they're going to love. And that's part of the process. And that's part of how I see and understand things the way I do, is from 20 years in a DJ booth, trying to get people to nod their heads and tap their foot, and learning how to connect with different ages and different races and different sexualities, for that matter. It was a fun challenge for me to always try to connect. If I wasn't getting energy back, I wasn't doing my job. Nothing worse than being a DJ in front of a room of people that you ain't got nothing in common with and you don't know how to reach them. And that didn't happen to me very often because my music taste is fairly broad. But still, I did a wedding or two where you're like, the bride and groom said, do this, but everybody else in this room right now is saying, I can't even really do that. And that's what I prepared for. That's what I brought vinyl-wise. Which is why I almost always bring my laptop with a huge volume of alternative things. Because if your vinyl plan doesn't work and it's all you have, you're stuck doing stuff that no one in that room's going to care about. And you're at best going to be background noise. But people want to dance and get drunk at a wedding. And you have to have the right tools. And I love doing them, especially the right wedding can be one of the most fun things. But if you're at a bad wedding, and like the bride's storming about and she's scowling at your music selections, you can feel a spotlight on you real quick, you know. And there's times too where you have the bride and groom arguing over what music should be played. And I've had a time where the groom was like, "Man, play that Wu-Tang for me and my boys. Nas, give me that Tupac." And the bride's up there scolding me every time I play something like that. Like, "Hey, grandma, you're still in the room. I don't want you. Don't listen to my husband." You know what I mean, they just got married and they're already on that level. You know what I mean? You just kissed this guy for the first time in that sense, and you guys are already at throats going, I don't care what she says. I don't care what he says. That's doesn't bode well for the future of that consummation. But anyway, I'm glad it resonates. And here's the other thing about that journey, as I spoke about. The importance of it on a personal level is of great value, and it will make that music have more staying power. But there's a second thing that's also really important. I didn't really touch on yesterday on the other episode, and that's music, art has intrinsic value. It has cultural value. It has spiritual value. And that's the most important thing about music. And a lot of times what you select and what speaks to you is in part because it's edifying. It's healing. It's a balm, a salve to ache, to help clean up the aches and pains of your life. And to each person, that's a different fingerprint. It's a different snowflake. And whether it's calming me by helping me forget, or whether it's soothing me through relatability from common experience, whether it's helping me because it's making me dance and forget, music has this medical, physical, spiritual healing ability. Art, a great book, you know what I mean? It can have a healing commonality to it that can speak to the right person who's open to that art. And so when you look at music, it's the power in the art itself. That's its greatest asset, and it's why it's most valuable. And if you sit there on your channel talking about pressings and audiophile this and gauge of paper and the vinyl and all, you're kind of ignoring all the important aspects. And it's not just, again, the music in terms of the drummer and the virtuosity and the chords and the scales. That stuff has its place. But there's an overall essence that's created by great art that has value that's hard to even put a number on. All right? And I hate to break it to people, but a $10 Scorpio Jackie McLean has the same essence as a $95 Music Masters Jackie McLean. And I will argue that the person who pays the $10 is often more receptacle, open to the healing and the power of that music than the guy who's not really listening to the music but listening to his speakers and his amps. And again, we don't want to go in the audiophile thing again, but there's a power in music and in art that's important. And it's why collecting music matters. Again, it's not just this. Again, if you're deep into pop music, you might not get some of that. But even for those people, a lot of pop music for a girl who's 37, Britney Spears, was something she related to. Wanting to be frisky, but also wanting to be seen as an angel. That kind of duality of a young woman's mind. Like, music always has a relatability that's important, and it goes deeper than just the value of something in a paper and numbers sense. And I think we get way too wrapped up in talking about how much something costs or how much value mine has versus just, man, did that music help? Did you find some healing value in that music? Because that's awesome if it gave you that. And so when I talked about in the Facebook groups, again, there's never that commentary going back and forth between people. It's just echo chamber talking about pressings. So not only are we not talking about, man, how great was Philly Joe Jones on that track, and man, the piano of Harold Mayburn was just like wow, Phineas Newborn. Did you hear the sax playing of Lester Young? Man, there's very little of that, but there's even less. Man, that music calmed me last night and gave me some healing. There's even less talk about the oppression that an art form is created in. Often has to be what that art form is speaking about, which I try to speak about as often as I can without being redundant. And yet, in the Facebook groups, there's no recognition of that. There's no value placed in the art itself. And again, a great painting, sometimes the meaning of the painting has more value to the masses than the painting itself has to the person who owns it or collected it. The Bible has more significance in a spiritual essence than the worth of any book, physical copy. See what I'm saying? The physical copy, you might find a rare old Bible that's worth 10 grand. King James himself signed it. But the value of the Bible in its guidance and its leadership and its ability to herd the masses and give direction and calm and soothe and find meaning. Again, a lot of it's that trying to shape mortality and understand, death is a confusing thing. It's probably no less confusing now than it was to a caveman 200,000 years ago, than it was to an Egyptian 4,000 years ago, an Aboriginal, Australian 40,000 years ago. Death is a bit of a mystery. It's an enigma. All our spirituality is wrapped around that, and art and music talk about that stuff all the time. Mortality is a huge, super huge common thread. And just so much of the power of the music, the power of the art form, the importance of it, the meaning of it, the personal journey aspect of it. There's so many reasons why music is so important and so worth collecting and so worth identifying with and validating and supporting the musicians and the artists. And yet, because of the echo chamber we live in and how so many people are reviewing for their friends' labels and trying to make a living doing something, it's all about, I need to be popular so people watch my channel so I can keep... It changes the undercurrent. Thank you, Kenny Drew. What a great track that is, by the way, Undercurrent. If you don't know Undercurrent, when you hear the piano come in and then the way the percussion surge, that's a sick groove. And it feels like an undercurrent. There's a party going this way, but it's pulling you back under. That's a sick-ass groove. Kenny Drew, Undercurrent on Blue Note. I think it's like 4,036, 4,040. Like it's in there somewhere. Great Blue Note session. So the music, the art has value. And I think we all, as people who love this music and this art, need to try to get that across to the people who aren't discussing that. And even our comments in the Facebook group, let's just inundate people with love and positivity. And man, it's great you got that record. How awesome is it? Did you dig Chet Baker? Did you love Jerry Mulligan? Were you feeling Stan Getz? Was Lee Morgan giving you something? Did Coltrane touch your cosmic spirituality? I mean, if you're not feeling Coltrane's cosmic spirituality, I'm not sure what you're listening to. Maybe Black Pearls, maybe some early Coltrane, but even Coltrane Sheets of Sound, 57, 58, there's still an urgency and a cosmic destination that he's speaking on. It's pretty omnipresent in Coltrane's persona. And so why people are so intent on just talking about the value of the pressing, the value of the record, how much originals cost, I think people are forgetting 90% of the story. And for me, that's just unfortunate. I do know as my journey unfolded, I met a lot of people along the way who I could speak with about music in this way. My best friend in this world, Justin, we talk about music endlessly. And it's such a different dialogue than what the internet echo chamber is. And it's, me and Justin can fall into a wormhole and just talk about musical connections. You know, I mean, it's just endless free dialogue about music, and it never does it come down to the monetary value of it. You know, it's rarely even talking about the format of the music. And one of the guys on the comments said yesterday about all those new record store day releases on CD for $100 or something like that, and they all would have cost $1,000 on vinyl. That's a smart choice on his part, especially with the price of what record store day records are starting to go for, and the uncertainty of the sound. You know, and I guess most of them were pretty good this time around. Great, more power to anyone who wants to have them, and there's no criticism of owning them. It's just the power of this internet community driving sales and keeping an homogenous small scope on something that's worthy of having a much broader panned out version of it. Jazz Canon, Jazz Kingdom is a large universe. That spotlight's only illuminating a small chunk of that map. But I guess that's where my channel comes in. So happy to be the bringer of the broader sense of the Jazz Kingdom and canon. I want to move on right now. We're going to talk about the new Tone Poet. And boy, I'm excited about this one. It's a record that did come out in Japan, I think in the 80s. It's a session I don't think I've ever heard before yesterday. I might have heard some of it on YouTube at one point. You know, possibly it popped up in some of my streaming. But to actually listen to the record, streaming is not the same. Often you don't even recognize who you're listening to or what when you're doing something. It's just on in the background. And I do think I've seen that Japanese cover pop up on my streaming a few times. But it's called Curtain Call. And they did a great job with the cover, of course. And instantly, when I put it on, I was impressed by the tonality of this session. And I've said before, Hank Mobley is one of the great chameleons in music, in jazz. He really grafts his sound to kind of fit in with who he's playing with. And you often have him paired with the Lee Morgans and Donald Byrds, which are fairly aggressive, bright players, up-tempo players. And here he's paired with a trumpet tone that I was like, ooh. And of course, Mobley softens and rounds off his tone. And his tone's always fairly round and gentle to begin with. But here he's playing with the great Kenny Dorham. And why this one didn't get released is a bit of a mystery to me. Jimmy Rouser's on the bass. And I'm going to be honest, I can't tell you a thing about the name Jimmy Rouser. I don't think I've even seen that name before. And apparently they have a picture of the fella. It almost looks like it could be somebody else, but I can't imagine who it could be. Art Taylor's on the drums. There's Kenny and Hank together. Then the great Sonny Clark, of course, is the pulse of the Dragon. And when Clark is fueling a session, it's always going to have, like as I've said many times, a poignant focal attack. And here he's playing with kind of gentle horn players, and it's just a wonderful. It reminds me of some of the work Mobley did with Art Farmer in '57. And so without even looking, I'm like, this record, I think it's from '57, and I nailed it on the head. It's from August 18th, 1957. Again, I don't know who Jimmy Rouser is, but if you like the Mobley Art Farmer work together, this is a great addition to that. That's a great picture of Hank Mobley, one I'm not sure I've ever seen before. A great picture of one of the great players in jazz that is held in high esteem now. But as I've said many times during his life and career, he was very much undervalued and overlooked. It's one of the most wonderful tone poets I've heard to date. It's light and buoyant and sweet and creamy. It's a gentle confection. It sits in your mouth like a warm treat. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it twice, and it's one of those great Blue Note records. Like, why wasn't this one issued? And there was quite a lot of Mobley issued in the 1500 sequence. And Blue Note, of course, had monetary considerations to make. And so I'm guessing this is one of the ones that got shelved just for money and time reasons. And I don't know if there's a label that has more high quality stuff that got shelved and has great value in terms of it being reissued. Bob Weinstock at Prestige erased tapes. So tapes that once had outtakes or alternate takes or sessions that didn't, he just reused the stuff. And so Prestige doesn't have a lot of bonus takes and alternate takes even out there to be had. And Prestige, what I have heard of the few alternate takes that are out there, they're usually flawed with like something that didn't go well. Versus Blue Note stuff that's been shelved is pretty high quality. And that's partly a revelation that relates to the rehearsal time that Blue Note guys were given. So there's just less flawed vault material from the Blue Note canon. I think Jackie McLean, a lot of his stuff got shelved in part because of his edginess that kind of was always a little bit suspect to Alfred Lyon. And I think Jackie got quite a few releases as it was, but there's a lot of McLean that didn't come out at the time. And there's a ton of Sonny Clark stuff that is being issued now that wasn't being put out. It's interesting how many of these tone poets have Sonny Clark on them. And so it's telling you that Sonny Clark was a really important piece of the Blue Note house band in 57, 58, 59. He was a big piece of that. Horace Silver definitely had his own groups and wasn't doing a lot of side work at that point. There's other piano players at Blue Note that, of course, it's a pretty endless stream of musicians available to them. But Sonny Clark definitely had a lot of sway with the A&R people, like Quebec, whoever it was, and got leadership of a lot of sessions. I'm also guessing that some of his addiction issues were reasons why some of that stuff just got shelved. And I think he was even a bit of a difficult personality to handle at times. And addiction can reveal that quickly. But that's something I've read notions of. I'm not sure of that. But I've just gotten notions that Clark could be, even coming to Leaping and Loping when he returns to Blue Note. I think his drug problem was pretty bad by that time, if I remember. I remember he just could be difficult at times, but that's true for most addicts. It's not unique to him. But I have a hard time thinking that his addiction issues weren't part of why so many sessions that featured him weren't issued at the time. Great Bud Powell cover. It's a Burt Goldblatt album cover. This is a 10-inch that was on the Roos label, by the way. Just a great cover. The imagery, the colors, the font. And there's clearly Burt Goldblatt's influence on Reed Miles. Like the layout, the color blocking. Goldblatt was a pretty innovative guy. But this is just a really fantastic record. And the Tone Poet stuff, especially the Blue Note releases, and we're talking the stuff that wasn't already part of the main canon. So most of the Pacific stuff, like the Katanga and the League Condits, Jerry Mulligan, whatever, those records are already canon. They're already part of the Pacific release history. And some of the Blue Note stuff they're putting out is also established canon stuff. But Tone Poet Blue Notes, there's a lot of it that hasn't been officially released in this capacity in America on vinyl. Some of it had those 80s covers that were awful. So Tone Poet's doing a great job adding really worthy material to the Blue Note arc. And I think that's fantastic. Great job, guys. And it's a treat to hear Kenny Dorham, who's that intellectual feeler. You know, I mean, he's got thoughts going along with his feelings. Some guys are just feelings. Kenny Dorham's got some intellectual feelings. Like it's a different sense of comprehension. It's a nice little fill right there. But Dorham's a great player. He's brighter and more articulate than a Miles Davis or an Art Farmer even. He's got a little bit more edge to him. But he's not the bright edge of Lee Morgan or even a Donald Byrd. And he's certainly not got the edge of a Freddie Hubbard or a Clifford Brown. He doesn't play that bright, clean tonality. There's a hint of cloud. There's a hint of fuzzy interference in his tone. But it works really well for Kenny Dorham. And Mobley, again, he's just in fine form here. Mobley's one of the great blues spiritual players of this time. And again, he was seen as kind of the middleweight champion, which was something like Leonard Feather coined for him back in the day as a reviewer on a record. And that name just kind of stuck. And I think a lot of people kind of underestimated him or saw him as like a lower weight class. And Coltrane and Rollins were the heavyweights. But that's a mistake. And I don't think he meant it in a critical kind of way. He was just referring to Mobley's different tonality, different approach. And again, instruments are an amazing thing because they reflect the musician behind them, the personality of that person, the forcefulness, the aggression, the tension. And jazz doesn't really allow for any phoniness. Your horn's going to reveal you, whether you like it or not. And so, once again, this is absolutely a home run. I wasn't as big a fan of Tipping the Scales, but this is, again, a fantastic record. And worthy of the addition to the Blue Note catalog. And just, what else can you say about it? You know, I mean, it's just wonderful that this stuff's coming out. It's sad how long some of the stuff's getting delayed nowadays. Again, that's partly because of Record Store Day, partly because there's a real bottleneck with pressing plants and demand. And so a lot of smaller labels, smaller stuff is getting squeezed out so Target can have all their Taylor Swift or all their, modern pop records for the consumers at Target and Walmart, whatever to buy. Excuse me. And that's a great thing. I'm glad vinyl has that power now. But we really are in need of a few new pressing plants, obviously. It does seem vinyl's back. I don't want to say to stay, but it's weathered a pretty giant storm. And it's back in a way that who could have ever predicted? You know, and people talk about CDs coming back or cassettes coming back, but it's not the same. Vinyl's resurgence, vinyl's stubbornness to die is a pretty unique phenomenon in Western culture. You're not going to see the VCR come back. The 8-track tape is done. Most innovation completely stifles and eradicates its predecessors. And the stubborn continuation of vinyl against the stream through the 90s especially, into the thousands, and now with it kind of growing, and it's still a small percentage of the marketplace in some ways because the digital streaming download thing is so popular now, but you definitely don't enjoy a record that you download the same way as you own it when on a record, on vinyl. It's different. So, in closing, it's a great time to be a record collector. It's a great time to be out there buying the music. And I'll say it one more time, don't hesitate to make your own path and buy what you like. And don't worry what the critics or the reviewers or the online community has to say about your pressing or your choice in music or what you think is enjoyable to listen to. Any more than you would let other people tell you what to eat. And I think it's clearer in food. A bunch of YouTube channels can be reviewing something, but you know whether or not you like crab or cilantro or whatever ingredient. You're like, I don't give a shit how much they say they like that. I'm not eating that. And music should be the same way. Trust your ears, trust your heart. And remember, the importance of the music to heal is one of its great hidden qualities that you can't quantify. You can't put a price on that. It's priceless. And that's the greatest testimony you can say about art, is its power to help me, to medicate me, to soothe me. And that's why I love music so much. That's why I've spent 40 years of my life talking about collecting music, being a musician, being a DJ, trying to help people have a good time, trying to connect with people. I love music. It's the most important thing in my life. And it hasn't really failed me or let me down. It's a part of my existence. And it's so important and it's so valuable. And so to hear it being treated like a commodity, I just have a tough time. I'm like, man, you're making it so disposable. And something that someone else kind of forces you to buy, you're just never going to connect with it the same way. So trust yourself. It's important. It's the music will matter more. Find your own musical fingerprint and trust your ability to know what you like you do with what you eat. You're right. You're right, no matter what anybody else says. And once again, as if someone criticizes the pressing you buy or how much you want to spend on a record, I can't tell you how many times I've seen discouraged jazz people who join a group all gung-ho. Man, look at these records I got. I'm so excited to have 43 people shit on them. And boy, it makes me upset. I'm like, God, you guys don't even know how much dicks you sound like. So we're done with that. I'm glad I connected with as many people as it did. Love y'all. Y'all be safe. If you want to support the channel, go to the description below. There's a Patreon. There's a merchandise store. I don't even like doing the shilling part of this thing, but you got to do it on some level. Certainly a lot of channels make more of a point to emphasize all that, but it is a part of the landscape, unfortunately. Appreciate you all. Got a few new Patreon subscribers. Thank you to you guys. Y'all stay safe. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.